Hi there, this is Ronnie, coming at you with a video. I'm a hobby gamer. The majority of the games in my collection are games that you get from sort of specialist websites, specialist shops, and so on. And my friend the local gaming store. They are not the kind of games that you find ordinarily in your sort of mass market toy stores and supermarkets that have a sort of toy and game section. And the reason for that being is that what you tend to find in supermarkets and toy stores are the usual suspects. Now that doesn't mean I don't have some of the usual suspects. I've got Cluedo and Scrabble. In fact, of my collection, those were the ones that started it. Outside of my RPGs, but I do have sort of small, very cheap in terms of price, sort of family card games. So I've done a set of reviews for them, which is going to be the rest of the video. And the reason for doing that is really to show sort of hobby gamers that some of the mass market games out there are quite fun and they're well worth picking up just for the family. And if you're a casual gamer or a non-gamer looking to maybe buy a game, these games are fun, they're very simple, and they're very inexpensive. In fact, with the possible exception of £5, which is a little more difficult to find, the rest of them can be bought for under a tenner each. In fact, if you spend your money wide enough, you could probably get sort of 3 for 20. And I think they're great wee games. I really do. I'm very happy with the ones I've got, and I just wanted to show these smaller games, sort of mass market games, that are actually quite fun and enjoyable. They're not big heavy card games. They're quick. I mean, they're all filler games, really. I mean, you can make them into a game, you know, that runs sort of 30-45 minutes. But yeah, they're good games. So the games in my collection are Whot, Uno, Dos, Nope, Phase 10, £5, and Monopoly Deal. Again, these are games that are very cheap, very easy to play. I hope you'll enjoy the video. I filmed them again on my phone. I think there's a bit of stuttering with some of the imagery, but at least you might see some of the cards. I do have a terrible habit of picking cards up from a draw pile and not actually pointing my camera. But hopefully you'll get the idea behind the games. These are not in-depth reviews of gameplay. They're a nice overview. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the videos. This is Whot. This is the simplest of the Switch style games that I have. It's a very simple game. As you can see, my cards are a bit worn because they get played a lot. I really need to invest in some sleeves for these. The game is very simple. You get dealt a hand of 6 cards, and the object of the game is to get all your cards out. On your turn, and I've set up a 2-player game here, on your turn you're looking to play one card that is either the same value or the same suit as the current top card, in which case we have a 12 yellow here. So in this case I could play the 5 yellow, or the 10 yellow, or even the 12 green. So the 12 green kind of helps me at the moment because it's less points at the end. So I'll get rid of that. we move over to this one. And he doesn't have a lot of options, so he's going to go for the 10 green. The 14 green would be the obvious here. And he's got no choice but to play the 4. He will play the 11. Now we're going to have a change because he's only got an 11 to play. 13. Now he is chapping. He doesn't have a card to play because the top card doesn't match, so he has to pick up. That's a good card. That's for later. He can't play either, so he's going to pick up. Now, the Whot card, when you play it, you place it on top and you change it. You change the suit. You can keep the suit that's there, actually. You just get to play it. In this case, he's going to play it as stars. And he can't play a star, but he's got a Whot card. That's going to help. And back and forth it goes until someone is out of cards. Then you add up scores. The person who's out of cards gets no points. Well, there's two ways to play it. You can either have it that the player who wins gets the points of all the other cards for their own score, or you can play it over a set number of rounds, which is what we used to do. Play it over a set number of rounds where the person who gets all their cards scores no points and everyone else scores the cards in their hand. And after a set number of rounds, the person with the lowest score is the winner. When counting the cards in your hand, you count the values. If you're caught with a Whot card, you get 20 points. If you're caught with a stars, the big number is the actual number that's used in play, but the smaller number in the star there is what's used when counting the cards in your hand. So even though that's a 1 during play, it's worth 2 points if it's caught in your hand. That's why getting rid of that 8 is rather necessary, because that 8, in terms of penalties, is the highest card in the game, because if you're caught with it at the end of the game, end of the round, you're scoring 16 points on yourself, which is not good. I used to do a small gaming club at a residential home, and I read about Whot. I'd never heard of it before. I read about Whot, and it sounded like a very simplified version of Switch. So I bought it, read the rules, seemed simple enough, brought it down to the little group, and they took to it like ducks on water. It was so much fun to play, and still is. It's not a deep game, but none of the games that are going to be in this particular video would be described as deep or even tactical. These are family, mass-produced, easy to get a hold of, or easy-ish to get a hold of card games. If you like Switch, but like so many people, you get annoyed at so many different rules and variants of it. You want something that's simple, easy to play, easy to teach. This is the kind of basic Whot. There's been a couple of reskins for various franchises. But it's a lovely little game. Good fun and easy to play. This is Uno, which, depending on if you've played Whot before, you can either see Uno as a slightly more advanced version of Whot, or view Whot as a slightly simplified version of Uno. essentially, the games are remarkably similar. You start with a number of cards, and the object is to get down to 0. When you play a card, you're looking to either play the same colour or same number as the top card. There are a few differences, though, and some of those regarding these. You have miss a turn, you can play that and nominate someone. This one reverses the order. Otherwise, you go anti-clockwise, or it will sort of put you back to clockwise again. Other major rules changes are if you pick up a card, if you find that you can't play, if you pick up a card and it's a card you can play, then you can place it down immediately, which is different from Whot. The other thing is when you are down to one card, when you're down to your final card, you say Uno. And if you do not say Uno by the time that the next person plays, you have to pick up cards. There's a lot of other sort of stunt cards. There are cards that make the next player pick up 2 cards. They don't get to play, they just have to pick up 2 cards. There's a wild card that lets you change the colour. There's a wild card 4, which not only lets you change the colour, it makes the next player have to pick up 4 and not get to play. So it's kind of a cruel game that way. Scoring is fairly similar to Whot in so much as the number cards are their face value in points. Any of the kind of specials are 20 points apiece. If I'm honest, I prefer Uno to Whot. Now, that's not to say that I don't like Whot, I do. But I prefer Uno because there's there's a bit more meat to it. Not much, to be honest, but there is a little more there. The number of times that I've won Uno could be counted on, sort of one hand, possibly with not all fingers, simply because I have no luck with this game whatsoever. But as a Switch variant, it's not bad at all, actually. Easy to pick up, easy to teach, easy to play. If you've again, as I said with Whot, if you find the constantly varying versions of Switch to be annoying, then something like Whot or Uno is certainly more sort of regimented. But if you've played Whot and you find it a little light and want something with just a bit more, then Uno is definitely worth a punt and is a very good, fun family game. This is DOS. This is a sequel / alternate to Uno. Game plays reasonably similarly in that you are dealt a hand of cards. I've got a 2-player game here, and you are looking to get rid of all your cards. How you get rid of all your cards, however, is slightly different. On your turn, you can play either a single card or 2 cards that match the number in the center. Okay? So if you're playing a single card here, it would be a 6. If it's a double, you get to play 2 cards that add up to 6. This is a wild DOS card. Essentially, its value is 2, but you can name the color because you can get bonus actions of creating new rows, getting rid of cards and so on from your hand to create new rows, and getting other people to pick up cards as well. So, as I say, on your turn, you can play a card. Now, when playing a single card, the colour doesn't actually matter. You just get a bonus if the colour matches as well. So I could play that. So I've played that. And because I've played that card, that goes away. And a new card comes up. That's not a great card. The chances of finding a card that will match that are pretty slim. So there's constantly sort of 2 cards, at least 2, sometimes more if you can get the bonuses. And like Uno, when you get down to a certain number of cards, you have to exclaim the name of the game. In this case, when you get down to exactly 2 cards, you have to say dos. And if you don't, by the time the next person's taking their shot, then you have to pick up cards. And scoring is similar to Uno as well. I bought this game on a punt, as is so often the case with a lot of these games. I bought it on a punt. It intrigued me that there was a sequel to Uno. And it's not a bad wee game. I would certainly not introduce this game to anyone who hadn't played Uno. I don't think it's impossible to teach people this game if they haven't played Uno, but I think letting them play Uno first would get them used to that style of play and then introduce them to DOS, which is just, it's a wee bit more. It's definitely a wee bit more. But I like it. I think it's a good little game. It's certainly a nice alternative. In fact, I've got it in a 160 deck box along with Uno. I've just got the 2 games together because they just naturally marry each other. I would recommend it. It's not as easy to find in your local shop as much as sort of Uno and Whot are, but it's not impossible to find, and it's very cheap. You'll find it for under a tenner. It's most of these games actually come under the under the tenner brand. In fact, there's only really one that I would say wasn't under a tenner, but we'll get to that. But this is a cheap, easy, simple game. Keep the family entertained. I recommend it. This is Nope. And the only way to realistically describe this game is as a reverse Uno. This is a game where you're desperately trying to keep a hold of your cards and not get rid of them, whilst creating a situation where you can knock the other players out. You're dealt a hand of 7 cards. As you can see, the cards some of them have single colours on them. Some of them have this sort of rainbow effect, or double colours and a number. So when it's your turn, the card in the centre says what you've got to play. Now in this case, you have to play one card that's either a yellow or a green. So this one's card. They are going to be really nasty. They're going to play this one. Now that's got a real problem, because that now have to play 3 cards that's either 3 blue or 3 green. Thing is, I've got enough cards to play 3 green. Now I can play them in any order, but obviously, in fact, I'm going to dump that one. And we're going to have this. And that is, now the next player has to play either three red, pink, whatever you want to call it, or 3 green. Well, the problem here is we've got this, which acts like a wild card. It could be any colour. So I have 3 greens, so I have to play them. Again, I can decide the order in which they play. So I'm going to do that. And again, that means I either have to play 2 green or 2 blue, and so on and so forth, back and forth. If you find you can't play, either because you don't have that amount of cards of that colour, or you don't have that amount of cards, period, then you pick up a card. However, in picking up a card, if that card means that you can now meet the requirement, you have to play them. So picking up a card might actually screw you over. Play continues until one person is standing. The scoring, there isn't really any scoring. It's usually just number of rounds. What we tended to do when I was playing this with Fiona and Maxine, when we played it, we would play the game, and whoever was left, the number of cards that they had left in their hand, regardless of value, the number of cards they had left in their hand was their score. And we would play it over a number of rounds. The reason for the number of rounds was simply so that everyone was in every round. And after a certain number of rounds, the person with the highest score would win. I like this game very much. Shaz, who is the owner of Settlers, my friendly local gaming store, bought a load of these in. And one of the reasons he told me that he bought it is because he was pretty sure I would buy it. And having looked at the back of the box, yes, I walked out with a copy that day, the minute you put them up, because it was exactly that style of simple family game that often appeals to me. As much as I can sit and enjoy a good heavy game, I also enjoy I can enjoy a silly game. And these are wonderfully silly games. And I love them. They're just so much fun. And this one in particular, the only sort of downside on it really is you are playing the sort of trust game where you are trusting that people are being honest when they say they can't play a card. But, you know, if everyone's being honest and honourable, it's a fun little game. Doesn't take that much time. If you're looking for something tactical, don't look here, it ain't there. There are some bonus cards, sort of action cards. I've never used them. Because the base game is fine. I mean, your mileage may vary. But I think Nope is worth having a go at. I really do. I recommend it. This is Phase 10. This is the first of 2 Rummy variants I've got. And I think this is a wonderfully underrated game. I first played this, was introduced to this game as my friend Andy Vaughan, who introduced this game to me. And I am very much a fan of it. The object of the game is to complete a certain phase. Now, there are 2 versions of the game, or in the rules. You can either do what's called the short game. These are the phases here. These are all 10 phases here. And you can either play 10 rounds where you're completing each phase in sequence, or you can play the game. You're still trying to complete it in sequence. Phase 1, phase 2, and you try phase 3 and so on. But if you're the person first out, you've completed your phase, you go next one. If you didn't phase, go everyone else's once. It takes a longer time. I'll show you the basics of that. And the first phase is 2 sets of 3. A set, of course, being cards of the same value. So on your turn, you can either take the top card from the deck or the top card from the discard pile. Now our player here is 11s, and he's got 2 10s. Good for us. There's a 10 sitting there, so you take that, and he's going to put as he does that because it's bad point. He would show that he had 7 and 3 10s, and the rest of his card would stay in his hand. Okay. Won't help player 2 at all. So pick up. That's slightly better. Now, they don't want to throw away an 11, and in an actual game with players, they would not throw an 11 away. But I'm going to throw an 11 because I want to show you one of the interesting aspects. Once you've got your phase out, you've still got cards left in your hand, and you've still got to get rid of them. You still have to get all your cards out. And the way you do that is you hit. That is, you add cards to either your own phase or someone else's phase. Now, it doesn't give them points or anything else. It's about you getting rid of your cards. But you can only start hitting a phase when you have your phase down. You've got to have yours completed before you can start hitting. So if I took that 11, I can add it to those 11s there, and then I can get rid of that. Now, that 8 really doesn't help. Neither does that 4, but we'll do that anyway. That 5 helps no one. There are some special cards. There are cards for making players miss a turn. And there are wild cards in there that can be used for anything. Score. So once someone has got all their cards out, the round ends. They score no points because they have no cards in their hand. And the rest score points. But if they've got their phase down, it does not count against them. It's only the cards in their hand that are counted against them. And the scoring single-digit cards are worth 5 points. Double-digit cards are worth 10. Skip cards, the ones that make people miss a turn, are worth 15. And wilds, if they're caught in your hand, are worth 25. And you play through either the long game or the short game until someone has completed all 10 phases. Now, they must be done in sequence. You can't suddenly say, "Oh, I've got 2 sets of 4. I've done phase 7." No. So you've got sets or you've got runs. Runs are cards in sequential order numerically. They can be any colour, which is always nice. And phases 4, 5, and 6 tends to be the ones that really separate the men from the boys. Run of 7, run of 8, run of 9. Pretty tricky to get. And at the end of it all, whoever has the lowest points total is the winner. I adore this game. My mum, as I said in the intro, my mum taught me to play rummy, or gin rummy at least. And I've always liked the game. And in fact, I've bought Phase 10 for my mum in the past. In fact, there's a few of these games that I've given to my mum over the years because she loves card games. And this is one we both play. And it's a fun little game. The mechanic of getting your phase out and hitting can take a round or two of explaining to people who have never played this style of game before. But quite frankly, it's such a fun game. It really is. It's great. I would recommend it. It's cheap as chips to buy. You usually find it in a supermarket, to be honest. It's cheap as chips to buy, and you get so much fun out of it. So I would recommend Phase 10 highly. This is 5 crowns. This is another rummy variant. I bought this originally, or I bought a copy for my mum. As I said before, she's a big rummy player, and this sounded like a sort of rummy variant that she would enjoy. I originally bought a set for myself only so I could learn the rules. So when I was bringing it down to my mum, because I got it as a birthday present, we could sit and play the game. So I would know the game in advance without having to open up her copy. And it's never been off my table since. It's such a fun, silly game. It's a bastard of a game, but it's a fun game with a unique twist to it. What you're trying to do is create either S, which is cards of value, or more in sequential order of the same colour. So 4, 5, 6, but it would have to be 4, 5, 6, all of the same suit, as an example. The interesting part of this is that the number of cards increases every round. So the first round that you see here, everyone has 3 cards, and it goes, there's 11 rounds are played, so it goes up to 13 cards by the end of it. And also the wilds each round change. So in the first round, jokers are always wild. In all 11 rounds, jokers are wild. And then in this first round, 3s are also wild. So I'm just going to go through a basic setup of a 2-player game. So this guy's got a 10. So he's got 2 10s now. So he's just going to get rid of that 9. That 9 doesn't help that player at all, so they're going to do that. But that 9 does actually help, because that gives them 9, 10. That 9 doesn't help them, but that 9 might help them. That's they're taking a gamble. That's I'm doing all of this outside. That's a 6. So they're going to keep that 6 and they're going to dump that 10. They've got a 7. That doesn't help them. Really, well, he's going to take that and dump that 10. 7 doesn't help him. So he's going to pick up Jack, which doesn't help. They've got a queen. That doesn't help. 10. Would have won with that if I'd kept the 10s. 6. Doesn't want to keep that. But in throwing that away, player 1 now has 3 6s. But once they're out, once they've played, every other player now has one final turn to try and get something, which in this case is nothing. So that is 28 points against player 2. If they had a wild card, it could count as anything, any value, any suit. So they're incredibly useful. If, however, doesn't really apply to the first round, but it certainly applies from the second round onwards. If you have a set of 3, be it a run or a set, you can place those down and those cards are not counted against you. Only the cards that remain. Obviously, because you're looking for a minimum of 3 cards and you have to get your whole hand out, the first 3 rounds with 4 or 5 cards, you're looking for 1 set or 1 run. Once you get to 6 cards, you can actually do 2 different sets. You can do a set or a run, or 2 runs or 2 sets, because you have enough cards there to do 2 different 3s, sets of 3. And onward it goes. And the rules change, the wild changes. That 4 is useless this round. Next round, with 4 cards, that 4 is the wild. And that could have been perfect if it had been next round. Scoring. Cards of their face value. A joker caught in your hand is worth 50 points. The other wild, if caught in your hand, is worth 20 points. So you've got the oddity that this round, if you were caught with a 3 in your hand and you couldn't do anything with it, it would cost you 20 points. Next round, it costs you only 3. There are no 1s or 2s in the deck. 3 is the lowest card. And there are 5 suits, and there's like 2 of each card. As you can see there, both 9 stars are in play. I love this game. Bought it as a punt, and it has barely left my table since. It's a really fun family game. If you're a rummy player, this is superb to play. As if you're someone who's used to gen rummy, but there's enough difference to it to make it an interesting challenge. I can't get enough of this game, to be honest. And I think it's superb, and I think anyone who enjoys rummy would get a kick out of this game. This is Monopoly Deal. As I've stated in other videos, I don't have Monopoly. I've only ever owned 1 copy of Monopoly, and I gave that away to my daughter. Because I'm not a big fan of the game, and other board games, I will do a video on those, that scratch that Monopoly itch for me. However, one of the reasons why I don't have Monopoly the board game is because I've got Monopoly Deal, the card game. And it is all the ruthlessness and nastiness of Monopoly shrunk till about 20 minutes of play. The object of the game isn't to have the most money, it isn't bankrupting other players, it's to have 3 of properties. Some of the properties are cards are 3 cards. This is a you put them into your man size set. Have any more than that, even cards if you have to discount it. So on your turn, you can do one of 3 things. You can play money. You place money out in its own little pile. That. Or you can play a property out in front of you. Or you can play an action card. Now, an action card can be done in 2 ways. You can either play the action card to the centre in the discard pile and take that action, or you can place it in your money pile and use it as money. And once it goes in as money, it stays as money. I managed to get a wild rent card as well. There's lots of, I wouldn't say finicky bits, but there's certain rules you've got to know when playing the game. You can lay up to 3 cards. You can even say you're not taking any turn at all, and as long as you don't have to discard, that's fine. If someone plays an action card such as It's My Birthday or a rent card, you can only pay with money that you've banked. You do never play money from your hand. So if someone plays a rent card and you've got no money there and you have no properties down, then you don't pay anything and that person's wasted their action card. If you have no money there, but you have properties, if someone pays a rent card, then you have to pay in rent. And you don't owe back rent. If they ask for 5 Monopoly monies, every game we've played, we've just called it millions. If someone asks you for 5 and you only have this Fleet Street out, then they don't get the other 2. They just get the 3. But if they ask for 5, and I've played Fleet Street and 3 monies, I would have to pay them both to make it to the 5, and no change given. There is no change given. When you get money in properties, any properties you receive from rent go out in front of you, and any money goes to your money pile. And if there's action cards in amongst the money pile, they go into the money pile that you have. There are also there are a couple of interesting cards. Slide Deal lets you nick a property from someone else that's out in front of them. Force Deal lets you swap one of your properties that's in front of you for one of them. In both those cases, you cannot take properties from completed sets. So if I have all the reds out there, then you can't steal from them. But there is another card called Deal Breaker, which can nick an entire set. There are also Just Say No cards that you can play to stop any action from taking place. You can stop slide deals, force deals, deal breakers, paying rent, any action at all that goes against you. You can just say no to it. However, and they don't count, because you're playing them on someone else's turn, they don't count as up to 3 cards you can play on your turn, because you're playing it as a reaction card. But because it's a reaction card, the player who originally placed that action card, if they have a Just Say No card, they can put it on top of yours and essentially cancel yours out. They can just say no to your Just Say No. And yes, you can just say no to their just saying no to your Just Say No. Yeah, it can get a little silly. game ends immediately when someone has 3 sets. The wild cards can be swapped about. For example, if I'm sitting with that wild card and I've got 2 of the purples, 2 of the pinks, and this is currently on the oranges, and I pick up, say, Vine Street, I could add that to my oranges and move the wild card to the pinks, and that would give me 2 full sets. And there's a couple of wild cards you can add to anything. It even has houses and hotels. When you have a complete set, you can add 1 house and then 1 hotel, which increase the value. But you have to have them on a complete set. And similarly to Monopoly, you can't add a house or hotel to the train stations or the utilities. I adore this game. It is so much fun. There is actually some tactical play. Yes, there's a bit of luck with a deck, but there is actually some tactics. There's a bit of push your luck and hope they don't have particular cards in their hand. But that's the same with any sort of competitive card game. I think this game is great. I've seen it in my local supermarket going for like £5-6. It's really simple to play. It's easy to teach and easy to play, and it's just a ball. If you're someone that likes the idea of Monopoly more than the game, I think this is the game for you. I really do, and I highly recommend this game.